Yeah, it's already, the whole computer's muted.
Oh, okay.
Refresh it. And we are, so I click it.
Okay.
And we're seeing everything correctly. And we can, what are we tossing to first? We're going to B. So, after, we're going to go to, what do we do? Yeah, the security report.
Okay, great. Yes. Alright, so...
That you do that, speak, and then I'll put B on preview.
Okay. Welcome to Fox 29's News Now on this cold Monday morning. We're going to get you right to some national security remarks by Homeland Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, who is participating in a discussion on the state of Homeland Security.
I'd be very curious. The Department of Homeland Security took a very strong position on Kaspersky in terms of not only DHS, but the entire government use of Kaspersky products. What should we be thinking about in terms of 5G? Because when I look at the critical infrastructure, that's at the very heart of it all. So if you want to touch on that, and if you want to discuss Huawei and ZTE in particular, you're more than welcome to. So their charm campaign is on, but there are some legitimate risks.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I would say. The nation states, they might have slightly different motives, China and Russia, but they are using a whole of government approach. With China, it's not just technological. Their investment that we see throughout the world is cannibalistic in nature, right? I mean, they come in, they offer a cheap loan, they offer opportunity, but the goal of that loan is to hold that country hostage. It's a very different kind of threat than we've seen in the past. When it comes to the technology, though, as I mentioned, they're using companies as a forward deployed force to actually eat away at our security from the inside, from the supply chain. So we have a variety of programs underway. As you know, we have the ICT Supply Chain Task Force. We're working on a new Federal Acquisition Council. We're really trying to assess where the risks are and make sure they're known. Each individual always has to make their own judgment. But again, because we do have a weak link in cyber, what we hope to do is to identify these vulnerabilities, take them out whenever we can with indigenous authority, but ensure that the
to enhance some of our security protocols and measures, and particularly some lessons learned from the National Security Special event with the Super Bowl in
Sorry about that.
Atlanta.
Quick technical
whether or not you got
Secretary
to
Kirstjen
experiment
Nielsen.
with new
So if you
technologies,
back
new
at
procedures, and how
Kirstjen
successful they've been
Nielsen's
for.
remarks on Homeland
Because I
Security.
mean, crowded spaces and stadiums, that will always be at the top list of risk and threat, whether it's in places of faith or whether it's at rock concerts or whether it's in stadiums.
Just bear with us as we work through the technical difficulties here. It looks like there's something with our satellite. This is a live shot, so there's always going to be some issues in between. So it looks like we're getting it back up. If not, we'll switch you over to something else.
Disaster response.
But for now, here's Kirstjen
to help us understand threats on the southern border. We use them, many states and localities use them to help fight fires. The flip side, of course, is that a nefarious actor can take a otherwise ubiquitous technology and use it against us. So we see them dropping phones into prisons. So we see them smuggling drugs across the border. We see them surveilling, disrupting our technology. You have seen the use cases out of Asia where drones fly by a multi-storied building, mimic the printer, and suddenly everything you're printing is captured by the drone. This is a very difficult threat to cover down on because of our open society in the United States. We're working closely with the FBI and the Defense Department to make sure that we have the technology to address this in a civilian arena. We did try out some new defenses over the Super Bowl. We did see drones over the Super Bowl. Great credit to the city and to the NFL for partnering very closely with us. I think all would say we had a very good effort. But continuing to understand how that threat is being used and then to develop particular mitigation and countermeasures is important. To swing back to 5G, I could say the same. I mean, we don't yet understand what 5G will be. It's truly a next generation technology. It'll enable automation, smart cities, capabilities that we cannot yet conceive of. There'll be a huge positive side to that, but we have to quickly understand the potential vulnerabilities it could introduce.
And the attack surface grows exponentially.
Absolutely.
And if you're building a secure system on quicksand, that could be a problem. So I'll ask one more cyber question, then I'll get to some of the Northern Triangle border questions. But where do you see the Department of Homeland Security fitting into the broader deterrent question? And as you know, Madam Secretary, this is a pet rock of mine. So unless there are consequences for bad behavior, you're going to see more and more and more bad behavior. And I think we are starting to levy some consequences in terms of prosecutions and indictments and naming and shaming, which I think is very important, and limiting people's ability to travel. But I sometimes feel like we don't have the offensive coordinator communicating with the defensive coordinator into a head coach kind of role. Where do you see the department fitting into that? And then more broadly speaking, the U.S. government approach to dissuading, deterring, and if need be, compelling bad cyber behavior?
So we have to use everything we have. Because without consequences, there is no deterrence. It's that simple. We all know that. I mean, that's the basis of law enforcement. So as you say, we're using financial, we're using diplomatic, we're using any sanction. We will use binding operational directives when needed to take particular companies or technology out of federal systems. And then we will do all we can to encourage the private sector to do the same. So I think it needs to be coordinated as you described. The good news is I signed the first ever MOU with the Department of Defense last year with Secretary Mattis. It has really helped us knit together and leverage each other's capabilities. We analyze the threat together. We're in each other's op centers. We help bring what the department knows to the private sector as well. But should anything happen, we are right there ready to respond with surge forces identified and ready to go.
Awesome. And I do think the lash up between DHS and DOD is actually already yielding some positive fruit. So kudos on that. Let's go to the Northern Triangle and sort of if you can give sort of a snapshot or a situation report of what's playing out there in the Western Hemisphere. And also, where do you see the threat going from here? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to improve? And then subsequently, on the counter-narcotic side, obviously illegal immigration is a concern, but on the counter-narcotic side, you've been leaning forward, and I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do, so on the threat side first, we're trying to lean forward on drugs, on trafficking, on smuggling, and exploitation of all the vulnerable populations. Unfortunately, we see all of that growing. The TCOs and the smugglers are not humanitarians. It's a business, and unfortunately, business is booming. So we have to find ways with our partners to just take them down. That involves removing their marketplaces from the dark web. It means eliminating all of the middlemen who provide IDs, travel patterns, information, the actual contraband itself. It's a very decentralized approach these days. We need to not play whack-a-mole, but take down the entire network. Northern Triangle countries are willing to help. They see the threat perhaps in a more pronounced way than we do. Whenever I speak to them, The two main things that they raise, one are what they refer to as extracontinentals. We might refer to them as special interest aliens, but those who have patterns that are travel patterns that are suspicious or like that of a terrorist. They're from the Middle East, they're from Africa to the Northern Triangle countries. It does not make sense why they would be traveling to a country in South America and then traveling all the way up Central America for the purposes of, quote unquote, seeking asylum. So it's very concerning to them. So we're working very closely with them and will through this compact to share information so that we all know who's traveling and hopefully understand what their intent is. But the other half is the humanitarian side, the focus in particular for them being on children. You know, as many, all three of the governments have said, they want their children back. They want to welcome their children home to their families and their communities. But the law, if you are a non-Mexican child, does not allow the Department of Homeland Security to send the children home. We have to keep them in the U.S., put them in HHS care, and then HHS does the yeoman work of providing a suitable and safe sponsor. But the countries themselves want their young to come back and build their countries. So they've asked us to change our laws to help so that we do not put children at risk.
So, Madam Secretary, I think we have time for another question, and I'd be curious in terms of some of the cooperation with the private sector from a critical infrastructure perspective. And you mentioned the new National Risk Management Center, the NRMC, and I think the focus on lifeline sectors is a very smart way to go. Not to suggest that everything, if everything's critical, nothing is, but the reality is they're all very important. But some truly from a public safety, national security, and economic security perspective are more critical than others. So I'd be curious where you see that going, and ultimately they're on the front lines of this war. And in addition to sharing more information, do you see more combined cooperation between some of the most critical infrastructure owner-operators in the department? And I think CISA is also yielding some fruit now that it's more than just a name change, it's more than just branding. And I'd be curious where you see all of that going. And I mean, you come to the job with amazing expertise on the cyber side. So what surprised you on that side, right?
We need to do more, right? We need to take it to the next level. So I think we've been through the let's partner. We've been through the let's share information. We even have built in here are some countermeasures and way to mitigate against the vulnerability and threat information that we're providing you. But now we need to operationalize those partnerships. And what I mean by that is stand shoulder to shoulder, and not just in response, which we often do in many of our mission sets, but on the front end. So, you know, FEMA is putting people into the field. The PSAs are in the field. We have cybersecurity advisors going into the field. TSA, Coast Guard, I mean, most of our components already have substantial presence throughout the United States and the world. We have 2,000 DHS folks deployed around the world. But we need to be with them to understand what our partners need best. It needs to be requirements driven. And the best way to partner is left of boom, right? How do we prevent? How do we assess? How do we identify? And I do believe that they also, sometimes faster than we, can identify the emerging threats that are coming at us, right? This is what's emerging from a technological perspective. Again, this is how we can use it in a force multiplier way. But here are the security vulnerabilities that it opens up. So how do we build that in? The other part are just citizens. You know, in this day and age, every citizen is on the front line. You know, it's so much more than hurricane-proofing your house and sandbagging. You now have to think about how you use your data and how it's stored. Don't fall for a phishing attack. Figure out where your media is coming from.
Which is still a vast majority of breaches start with phishing and whaling. I mean,
they do.
80%.
And they're more and more sophisticated, as you know. I mean, the adversaries use artificial intelligence to make sure that that email that gets sent to you looks just like an email your daughter might send, right? So you're that much more likely to click on it before you realize that something is amiss.
And since I see the tyranny of time gives me 2 more minutes, so I'd be curious on the FEMA front.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, you've seen a rash of devastating events, including on Auburn's campus itself. And General Burgess, who welcomed you, his home was one of those. Fortunately, everyone was safe, but many others not so. Where do you see FEMA retooling themselves, and where you see the disaster management and resilience? You talk about strategic resilience. I'd be curious what that looks like, because we can't prevent it certainly can't prevent Mother Nature, but we can build more resilient communities, families, and individuals. So I'd be curious where you see that going.
No, I think what FEMA has been doing, and great kudos to Administrator Long, to Pete now. The vision is very strong within FEMA, and it's really about how can we prepare citizens, how can we make them resilient. And that's a very different way of thinking about just response, right? Just after the catastrophe, how can DHS and FEMA effectively respond? We do that quite well, but it's pushing it all left. So how can we help better prepare, to prevent, to mitigate? How can we think about the assistance, the tools, the training, to ensure that is also pushed to the left? Even when you think of school safety, which FEMA, along with much of the department, has a role in, it's giving tools to those who work in a school environment to not just be able to understand different options for hardening the building, but first aid techniques, stop the bleed. Let's train people who we know will actually be first responders so that they're better able to help their neighbors. So resilience is comprehensive. It's not just one thing. It's thinking through raising that baseline. We're all about raising baselines at DHS, but security and resilience to ensure that have you opted into the alert and warnings in your environment? Do you know what local officials to listen to in an emergency? Do you know what threats are likely to occur in your area? Get smart, spend the time, be ready.
And very last question on the aviation side, and you're a very original plank holder of what pre-Department of Homeland Security, actually, even at TSA. Where do you see the aviation threat going, and more importantly, looking ahead, what TSA may be doing to try to stay, again, left of boom, but also technology changes, human nature remains consistent, understanding where some of these pieces come together?
TSA, I've so many components like this, but TSA is one of those components that, because they do their job so well, they're often not recognized for it, meaning but to meet the emerging threats, and not just within the United States, but the partnership and the effort that has gone into ensuring that those security enhancements are shared throughout the world has been astonishing. A lot of modeling, a lot of R&D, a lot of understanding the new threats as they evolve. As you know, we're deploying more and more CT devices. Computed tomography is truly next gen. It's 3D. You can turn the image around. You can really understand what you're looking at. Insider threat, dogs, really thinking through who's traveling.
We got good dogs at Auburn.
Yeah, the dogs are great. Everyone loves the dogs.
Madam Secretary, thank you for a phenomenal overview of what keeps you up at night, and the rest of us can sleep a little better since you're on the job, on the ball. We at Auburn University, I think, have an opportunity, but more importantly, a responsibility to contribute to our national security, to contribute to our homeland security, stand ready to help in whatever way we can. Madam Secretary, thank you. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you.
Now to some breaking news out of the Netherlands. A manhunt has been launched for the persons responsible for a shooting that left one person dead and several others wounded in the Netherlands. Police in the central Dutch city of Utrecht are on the scene searching for clues at the tram where the incident occurred. The Dutch anti-terror coordinator has raised the threat alert to its highest level around the city following the incident this morning. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte called this situation, quote, very worrying. Now to some sports news. Temple and Villanova have both nabbed spots in the NCAA tournament, and this year's extra special for Temple's coach, Fran Dunphy. Fox 29's Bill Anderson filed this report.
Listen, they've got nothing but positive. They made the tournament. It's Coach Dunphy's last run. They've got absolutely no pressure, so hopefully they can step up and perform. Both Temple and Villanova now dancing in the NCAA tournament. Let's start, though, first with Villanova. Their celebration was honestly kind of subdued. They already knew they were in the field of 64. They were just waiting to see who they would face, and after winning the whole tournament in both 2016 and 18, anything less than a few wins for them would actually be disappointing. And the Wildcats open up Thursday evening against St. Mary's. Now, Temple's reaction, on the other hand, was completely different. They were just excited as one of the last four teams to make it. And as you pointed out, it's Coach Fran Dunphy's last season. They wanted a chance to send him off on a high note, and now they get that chance as they open on Tuesday in a play-in game against Belmont. So the expectations are different, and you could hear that in the comments from Villanova compared to Temple.
It was different, just waiting around to see where we're going to be at. Had a more exciting feel to it. You had no idea where you were playing. So it was cool that we got to see, got lucky enough to play against St. Mary's.
They're a very good team. They've always been good in the past few years. So we just know that the coach is going to get us ready, and we have to play them.
It's a hard day. It's when you know you're in, it's the greatest day ever. When you know you're out and you have no chance, it's the worst day ever.
That means a lot. The past 2 years have been rough. We weren't even on the bubble for those. So for us to get in this year, it really means a lot.
The past few days was definitely a grind. I feel like that definitely helped us out, and that just gives the young guys experience of what this big-time basketball is about.
I've never seen St. Mary's play before, so I'll be watching as soon as I leave here, because I have no idea anything about it.
How much does the fact that they beat the #1 team in the country get your attention?
It means that they're really, really good. I know that, so it'll be a very good team that we're playing against.
Grateful we're in, grateful we're continuing to play basketball, happy for, in particular, the seniors.
Just happy to be in the tournament, happy for Coach Dunphy that he can go out in the tournament, and excited about our matchup, so ready to play.
So positive, being a glass half full person, there's absolutely no pressure on Temple. They're playing for Coach Dunphy. Belmont's tough, but they're ultimately beatable. Villanova, no one's expecting them to make a long run this year. So guys, it's all optimism for them.
Coming up, we'll have New Jersey Attorney General Gerbiel Graywall announcing the arrest in the takedown of a narcotics and weapons trafficking ring that was trafficking so-called ghost guns, AR-15 assault rifles, which are untraceable guns assembled from kits purchased online. These are the first ghost gun seizures and arrests under New Jersey's new law, making it a crime to build, possess, or sell ghost guns in the state. So again, we'll have that soon coming up.
The county sheriff's office, the various prosecutors' offices, but they will be going around me. Chief Thompson today is going to be introducing, welcoming us all here today. He'll be followed by the Attorney General, by Deputy Director Jill Mayer from the Division of Criminal Justice at the Attorney General's office, and then by Colonel Callahan from the State Police. Tim's going to make sure we're all symmetrical for you. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. There's press release floating around. We have copies of the boards. I have them with me on paper. They're also available up on our website if you need them digitally. We're going to take a couple of on-topic questions immediately following the remarks. And then if there's time, one or two off-topic questions if you guys have them. Any questions before we get started? All right, wonderful.
Good morning. My name is Scott Thompson, Thomson. I'm the police chief of the Camden County Police Department, and I'm hosting today's event. So thank you all for joining us here today. In addition to the New Jersey Attorney General Graywall, also joining us today is the Colonel of the State Police, Pat Callahan, Deputy Director of Division of Criminal Justice, Jill Mayer, the Acting Special Agent in Charge of the FBI in Philadelphia, Steve McQueen, the South Jersey Resident Agent in Charge, Michael Messenger of the FBI as well, the Gloucester County Prosecutor, Chuck Fiore, his chief, Tom Gilbert, Representing the Camden County Prosecutor's Office today is Captain Terry King. Representing Voorhees Police Department is Chief Lou Bordy. Mount Ephraim Police Department is Chief Brian Conti. Deptford Police Department is Chief Kevin Pancoast. The Gloucester Township Police Department is Jason Giddings. And representing the Lindenwold Police Department is Captain Michael McCarthy. So the reason why we're joining here today is the Attorney General will announce a significant takedown of drugs and guns that have been affecting our region. On a larger, more overarching scale, I will say that we have reduced crime to a 50-year low in the city of Camden, and this is in large part because of the efforts of our law enforcement partners, most of all who are joining us here today. A rising tide lifts all boats when it comes to public safety, and the inner workings of local, county, state, and federal officials results in safer communities. And there's no greater evidence of that than here today. It was just last year that the General was down here and announced a similar initiative of a takedown, in which we took some really bad people, a lot of drugs and guns off of our streets. And it's not by happenstance that Camden and Camden County, southern New Jersey, and the state of New Jersey itself continues to become a safer place for people to live because of these law enforcement efforts, particularly coming from the leadership in the state of New Jersey by Attorney General. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in the state of New Jersey, Attorney General Grabir Graywall. General.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chief Thompson, for hosting us, and thank you all for coming. We're here today to announce charges against 12 men as part of our takedown of a criminal network, a network that allegedly trafficked in dangerous drugs and guns in and around Camden County. But what makes this case so important and truly a landmark investigation is that the members of this ring trafficked in what are called ghost guns. Ghost guns are guns that are assembled from kits purchased online. They're not registered. They don't have serial numbers. And they're sold without any background check process whatsoever. The 4 men we charge with trafficking these guns in this case are the very first defendants to be charged for manufacturing and distributing ghost guns under a new law signed by Governor Murphy last November. A law that makes it a crime to purchase, manufacture, possess, distribute ghost guns in New Jersey. And the reason we sought that law, and the reason the governor and the legislature stepped up to pass and enact it, is because ghost guns are a real and dangerous menace. They offer criminals, convicted felons, terrorists, domestic abusers, people who we all agree shouldn't own firearms, the ability to access them. They give them the ability to access a very deadly level of firepower that cannot be traced. At the time we sought the law, we knew that criminals were actively seeking and using these guns. And we knew that ghost gun manufacturers were exploiting loopholes in our existing laws to give criminals access to them. This alleged conspiracy being charged today among drug dealers and gun traffickers dramatically proves both of those points. The 4 men we arrested for gun trafficking allegedly conspired to sell 6 ghost gun AR-15 style assault rifles for prices ranging from $1,100 to $1,300 each. That's twice the price that these guns sell for on the legal gun market. In addition, as a result of the great investigative work by the agencies behind me, we also intercepted the parts for 2 more ghost gun AR-15 assault rifles. Orders that the defendants had allegedly shipped to Bensalem, Pennsylvania to get around our new law. You see, the defendants were well aware that New Jersey had criminalized these weapons. As we alleged in court last week, the men specifically discussed the fact that they could no longer ship these ghost guns to New Jersey. So instead, they found an address in Pennsylvania to send them to. One of their alleged conversations went like this and is on the board to my left. Quote, "All right, I just wanted to let you know that I just got confirmation it'll be here Sunday. So we got to go. They changed some laws, so we got to go over to Philly and pick it up." The arrests that we're announcing today are the results of Operation Stonewall, a year-long investigation led by the Division of Criminal Justice and the New Jersey State Police, an investigation that led to the arrest of 12 defendants, 10 of whom are charged with distributing drugs, primarily cocaine. And 2 of those 10 defendants are also charged with trafficking in ghost guns, along with 2 other men who are charged solely in connection with illegal trafficking of ghost gun AR-15 assault rifles. I'm joined to my right by Deputy Director Jill Mayer of the Division of Criminal Justice, and to my left by Colonel Pat Callahan of the New Jersey State Police, both of whom will share additional details concerning today's announcement. But as Chief Thompson mentioned, like all successful law enforcement operations, this case was a true partnership and a collaboration among state, county, local, and federal law enforcement partners. And we're joined by a number of our partners on this matter this morning. Chief Thompson named them all, but I want to thank them. I want to thank them for their partnership on this case and other ongoing matters that we are working together. There is simply no mistaking the connection between the drug trade and illegal guns. Again, this case is particularly alarming because it shows that the threat of ghost guns to public safety and to law enforcement safety is not abstract. It's real. It highlights the black market that exists among criminals for these untraceable guns. I previously said that the guns are sold in kits, but the reality is that they are 80% finished when they are shipped, and buyers finish them using parts sold by the same manufacturers, following simple instructions that are sometimes posted online. That's why even before our new law was enacted, I sent cease and desist letters to ghost gun manufacturers last June, warning them to stop selling their products into New Jersey or face legal action. Those investigations remain active and ongoing, and today's announcement underscores the need to continue our efforts to hold manufacturers accountable for helping evade background checks and registration requirements, and for putting dangerous, untraceable weapons in the hands of criminals in New Jersey. And we will, of course, aggressively investigate and prosecute all those who illegally traffic guns into New Jersey, including those ghost gun buyers and builders who violate our new criminal law. Because I think that's what public safety and law enforcement safety in this state requires. I commend all those who participated, again, in this outstanding investigation. We undoubtedly saved lives by taking untraceable guns out of the hands of criminals and off of our streets. Now it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Deputy Director Mayer, who will be followed by Colonel Callahan, after which we'll take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General Grewal. Operation Stonewall began in early 2018 as an investigation of an alleged cocaine distribution ring in Lindenwold involving resident Lamont White, his son Tyreek Bradford, and an associate. Investigators soon developed information that White allegedly was obtaining cocaine from defendant Christopher Stoner of Lindenwold, who in turn was allegedly being supplied by 6 other defendants, including Nicholas Cillian of Mount Ephraim. The investigation expanded dramatically when we learned that Stoner was allegedly trafficking guns, including ghost gun assault rifles. We quickly pursued those leads and identified all of the men responsible for that illegal gun trafficking activity and obtained evidence regarding 5 separate sales involving a total of 6 AR-15 ghost gun assault rifles. The 4 men who are charged with the illegally trafficking ghost guns are Stoner, Cillian, Paul Coram, and Mark Freeman, both from Lindenwold. Those 4 defendants each face 2nd and 3rd degree charges related to the unlawful possession and sale of assault rifles. Also, Of particular significance, those defendants are charged under the new ghost gun statute with the following third-degree offenses: unlawful possession of a covert undetectable firearm, and unlawful manufacture, transport, and disposition of a covert undetectable firearm. Corum and Freeman, who allegedly purchased and assembled the ghost guns, face an additional third-degree charge under the new statute of purchase of firearm parts to manufacture an untraceable firearm. As the Attorney General noted, this is the first time any defendant has been charged in a ghost gun trafficking case under the new criminal statute. Second-degree charges carry a sentence of 5 to 10 years in prison, and third-degree charges carry a sentence of 3 to 5 years in prison. Stoner also faces first-degree charge of distributing cocaine, carrying a sentence of 10 to 20 years in prison. In addition, Stoner, Cillian, and the other 8 drug defendants listed in the press release are charged with second-degree conspiracy to distribute cocaine. The defendants are also charged with other narcotics and weapons-related offenses. On March 8th, getting into the details of the case a little bit, we executed search warrants at the residences of Stoner and Cillian and an apartment shared by Corum and Freeman. During the execution of those search warrants, we seized 3 handguns, 2 shotguns, some crack cocaine, approximately 120 oxycodone and Xanax pills, and several $thousands in cash. In addition, tools used to assemble ghost guns were found at the apartment of Corum and Freeman. We also executed a search warrant at a residence in Camden associated with defendant Monroe Gadsden, where we seized 2 handguns, 3.5 pounds of marijuana, drug packaging materials, and $18,420 in cash. Corum was ordered detained in jail until trial at a detention hearing that was held last Friday. Stoner, Cillian, Freeman, Gadsden, and Bradford are all being held in jail pending detention hearings this week. White is in Northern State Prison on a prior conviction unrelated to this matter. The other 5 defendants were released subject to conditions following detention hearings held last week also. I want to recognize just a few people responsible for the tremendous effort and success of this operation. From the Division of Criminal Justice, Gangs, and Organized Crime Bureau, Deputy Attorney General Cassandra Montalto to my left, who's the lead prosecutor in this case, Deputy Bureau Chief Eric Dabb, and Bureau Chief Lauren Scarpa Yafantis. From the New Jersey State Police Gangs and Organized Crime Bureau South Unit, Detective Ryan Cunningham, who's the case agent, and his supervisors, Detective Sergeant Dorothy Quinn, Detective Sergeant First Class Michael Davis, and Lieutenant Dan Strassheim. Of course, I too want to thank all of the agencies and individuals who participated in this investigation who were mentioned by Attorney General Graywall. Drugs and illegal guns are the dual catalysts driving most of the violence on the streets of our cities, and we allege that this criminal network was distributing both. Through proactive investigations like Operation Stonewall, we are working with the New Jersey State Police and other law enforcement partners to make our communities safer. We will continue to pursue all leads related to ghost guns and will aggressively investigate and prosecute anyone who manufactures, possesses, or distributes them in New Jersey. Thank you. I'd like to turn it over to Colonel Callahan.
My remarks will just basically echo what Chief Thompson, Attorney General Graywall, and what Deputy Director Jill Mayer touched upon. You seldom see an investigation of this magnitude, or at least a press conference for it, with one agency standing up here at the podium. And maybe a long time ago it was about who got to stand here, but I can tell you that's not the case anymore. There's a dozen different agencies involved in this investigation across federal, state, county, and local departments. The weapons and drug traffickers would bank on us not communicating and not streamlining our efforts to combat the weapons and drug trafficking. But today, in this event, and this investigation just underscores how far we can come when we collaborate and how effective we are. Every agency represented here does an outstanding job on its own, but when we collaborate and we work together, it results in investigations like this that ultimately makes the citizens of New Jersey safer. And it's my honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of these agencies, both here today and across the state. The men and women of the state police will certainly continue to serve in that capacity, and I'd like to thank everybody represented here today for a phenomenal job. General.
So with that, we're happy to take your questions on topic.
General, you've talked in the past about why ghost guns are so dangerous that anybody can just order them online and then put them together. Primarily, was this just a situation where this group of individuals, they were taking it upon themselves to order the guns, put them together, and then it's just like they're for sale, so it's even easier than ordering it online?
That's right. I mean, that's part of the problem with ghost guns that we've highlighted in prior news conferences and prior announcements, that it allows individuals, whether they be individuals who are engaged in gun trafficking, who want to assemble these firearms, to assemble them and then sell them, and they're untraceable, and we have no background check or registration process to figure out who's buying them and whether they're qualified to buy them. But it also gives the ability to individuals to go online, buy nearly completed firearms, the kits to complete them, and directions online on how to complete them to do so. We enacted the new law in November. I'm happy that this conversation at least revealed that one manufacturer was complying with our new law and decided then to not ship to New Jersey and ship to these defendants to Pennsylvania. But more work remains to be done, and our investigations of other ghost gun manufacturers are ongoing. So I have no details that I could share at this time other than to say we sent those cease and desist letters last June. The law was enacted in November. We continue to investigate actively any companies attempting to sell ghost guns or ghost gun parts into New Jersey, and those investigations are ongoing. And at a future date, we'll have an announcement to make on the results of that investigation. If they continue to prosecute, they could be prosecuted under existing laws and under our new law if they continue to sell into New Jersey after the enactment of this particular law in November.
Is there any follow-up, if I may? Are any of the guns unaccounted for? Did any of the ghost guns that got purchased and got made get out?
So there were a number of investigative steps that were taken in this case. The director mentioned that search warrants were executed at a number of locations, and we are following that evidence wherever it leads if there were additional ghost guns that we determined based on our investigation that were sold, we'll follow that evidence wherever it may lead. But I don't have anything more to add to that now. Yeah.
Was there any indication that the company that sold these pieces that ended up in Venezuela had any idea that they would be purchased with the traffic into Jersey?
So, here's the part of the problem with ghost gun manufacturers. When you have responsible manufacturers, when you have businesses that are following the rules, they know their customers. And when you see repeatedly the same address and the same individuals at the same location continuing to order parts and parts and parts and parts for the same types of guns, some red flags have to go up. That what's going on here is not somebody who's an enthusiast or a hobbyist, but rather someone who's engaged in illegal trafficking. And that is part of the problem with ghost gun manufacturers, that they are playing fast and loose with our rules and looking for loopholes in existing laws that they exploited until we closed one. And in this case, then they took their operations to Pennsylvania. So we will continue to use whatever tools we have to hold ghost gun manufacturers accountable for their participation in trafficking firearms. I'm going to go to Cleve.
So we hear about gun confiscations all the time when we get press releases as part of various investigations. Can you give a sense of what makeup of the illegal gun market that ghost guns are at this point?
I couldn't give you a percentage, but I could say that we recovered 6 in this particular case. We recovered parts for 2. We've probably recovered, just the state police alone, over 15, well over 15 in the last year. So we are starting to see them at crime scenes. We are starting to see them in our investigations. That's why I say they are not an abstract threat. They are a real threat to public safety, to law enforcement safety. And I think no matter where you come out on guns, we can all agree that there are people, criminals, domestic abusers, terrorists, others who should not have firearms, and we need to have a background check process. And this particular scheme and the manufacture and sale of ghost guns does an end around on that process.
I just want to hear a little bit about where this compares with the problem of straw purchases as far as the import of other weapons.
So I would still say that straw purchasers and other trafficking rings remain the largest source of firearms trafficked into New Jersey. When we were here with Chief Thompson last year, we announced the results of an investigation involving straw purchasers who are buying guns in Ohio and then bringing them into New Jersey and selling them to the streets in Camden. 80% of our firearms in New Jersey come from out of state. The majority of them come from Pennsylvania, and that's why the Colonel, along with the state police, we are putting out information in our gun stat reports to highlight the trafficking of those firearms from other states. And 485 or so in the last quarter of 2018 came from other states. Those are not ghost guns because we're able to track them back to their point of sale, and that still remains the number one problem and source of illegal firearms on our streets.
So if you guys are talking more about collaboration among different agencies within New Jersey, and you know that the guns are coming from out of state,
yeah.
How is that interstate collaboration or communication working out?
It's increasing. I think New Jersey is a leader in this effort. The governor signed on to a coalition of other governors called States for Gun Safety. We have had conversations without going into the specifics with our partners in our neighboring states and in other states about taking the information that our state police does an incredible job in gathering at the ROC, at the Regional Operations Intelligence Center, and to share that information, to go back to the point of sale, and to hold either if it's a bad dealer, a bad faith dealer, or straw purchasers accountable. I'll go over there. Yeah, so in order just to preserve the integrity of that investigation, I don't want to share that information at this point, but we'll have an announcement at a future date regarding those efforts.
And are you alleging that it basically is a business model where people are taking an existing AR platform, breaking it down, and then selling it in random parts?
What they're doing is selling 80% complete guns. They're not taking existing guns, but creating the parts for new ones. And so this is to evade federal and state laws. They fabricate the lower part of these guns, the 80% complete portions, and then sell the remaining parts, and then in some cases provide links to YouTube videos on how to complete them. And so it's doing a complete end-around process we have in place to ensure public safety and law enforcement safety here in New Jersey. Right here. Sean. So again, I don't want to get into the details of that separate investigation at this point, so I can't answer that one right now. Go ahead, Sean.
General, can you help me understand a little bit better the interplay between the two state laws here? So I think it's fair to say that the sale of these firearms in either state is already a crime. Is that correct?
If they qualify as assault weapons, okay. Right? Yep.
And so what sent the defendants over to Pennsylvania was the manufacturer refusing to ship to New Jersey?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And these were determined to be for sale to New Jersey residents or in New Jersey?
So that manufacturer refused to sell the parts for these weapons into New Jersey. Ghost guns, right, to the manufacture and sale of ghost gun parts into New Jersey. So that's what prompted them, we allege, based on the conversation that's on this board, to sell into Pennsylvania.
Have you discussions with the Attorney General of Pennsylvania?
I have. So I would, we've had preliminary discussions about increased collaboration, about sharing of information, about using our mutual intelligence to identify bad faith dealers and further our investigations. But they are aware of our efforts with respect to ghost guns. We joined together on a number of matters with respect to 3D printable guns in the past. So we continue to have a lot of conversations about increasing public safety in our respective states.
Could you release the name of the manufacturer?
Not until our other investigation is complete.
General, for those of us who don't know, could you give us a sense of how dangerous is an AR-15 AR-15, what can it do that, for instance, a handgun or a rifle can't do?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, because I think both can inflict harm and can be fatal if used. If a bullet from a handgun can kill somebody and a bullet from an AR-15 can kill somebody. So it's hard for me to answer that question.
But, I mean, is it rapid fire? Is it more than one shot at a time?
That's right. I mean, some of it is that the automatic nature of the weapons, and part of our statutes speak to that, what Sean was referencing with our assault weapons ban in New Jersey, and the laws that criminalize those particular weapons. But certainly if you have the ability to fire additional rounds in a shorter period of time, it increases the ability to inflict harm. But both are dangerous when in the hands of the wrong people. Yep.
I know you're not one of the lawmakers that made the law, but looking into the genesis of it, is there a tie between ghost guns and mass shootings?
I can't make that link. I could tell you that we are doing everything we can to ensure that only those individuals who go through the proper process are able to purchase handguns and firearms in this state, and we're doing everything possible to make our communities safer from gun violence, to protect our communities from incidents of mass violence, and certainly eliminating the ability for individuals who don't go through a process to purchase a firearm, who evade a background check process, certainly is a step towards public safety and law enforcement safety at a bigger scale. Yeah. New Jersey. So the director referenced that the gun-making parts were recovered at the Lindenwold location. So beyond that, I can't add more to what's already in the public record. There was a hand right here. Okay. Great minds think alike. Yeah. So we're continuing our investigation. The investigation is ongoing with respect to the question you asked.
Were the people who were involved here known to be part of any gang affiliation or sect that you see operating in Camden City? I recognize some of them were located, but was this organized beyond just a couple of people?
So we don't have anything to add publicly with respect to gang affiliation or things of that nature at this point.
General, you had mentioned the link, or somebody mentioned the link between guns and drugs creating most of the violence in New Jersey. Could you expound on that, explain why that's the case? Is it like
sure.
a perfect match for problems?
I mean, I think when we look at our major cities, we see, and I'll just give you one example. If we look at violence in Trenton, most of the violence that we're seeing in Trenton, most of the shootings that we are seeing in Trenton, most of the incidents that we're seeing, violent incidents that we're seeing in Trenton, are around territories and turfs where people are selling drugs, and it's neighborhood gangs protecting their own space in which to engage in criminal activity, which, in our experience, more often than not, is the drug trade. And so I think that's what the deputy director was touching on, about the twin evils of dangerous drugs and dangerous guns, and this case being a perfect example of those two dangers coming together. All right, thank you. Why don't we let the folks exit? Yeah, go upstairs.
All right, and switching gears to politics, we're talking the 2020 presidential race. And this weekend we saw new candidates announce that they're also joining the race to become the next president of the United States. one question that remains is, what is Joe Biden going to do? We had a hint this weekend. Doug Luzader has the scoop.
G20 field for the White House is expanding again.
There are now more than a dozen Democrats looking to unseat President Trump, and there's going to be more. We're not that, especially one person in particular, folks are waiting to hear.
That's true, and who knows, Doug may announce right now.
That's right, exactly.
Do it.
Well, listen, Democrats have made it easier for underdogs to get in. I'm not sure they want this kind of underdog, but the other name that we're talking about is not exactly an underdog, and that's Joe Biden, and there is a possibility he may be announcing relatively soon.
The race has begun in Iowa. I'm sure it was just a 5K, but Beto O'Rourke was there, and the former Texas congressman posted a decent time crossing the finish line. But this medal is not the reward he's ultimately after.
We can begin by fixing our democracy.
O'Rourke jumped into the race last week, and he is not alone. Over the weekend, New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand announced that she's in. And take a look at the crowd now of official Democratic candidates. But there is also one big name that hasn't announced. Or has he?
I have the most progressive record of anybody running for anybody who would run.
Seconds later on Saturday, former Vice President Joe Biden crossed himself after what appeared to be a slip. He hasn't technically announced, but many supporters see it coming.
Well, I'm very optimistic that Joe Biden will soon formally announce his campaign for the presidency.
South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is getting some play, too, as he mulls a bid.
When we do come out, it's going to be a big one.
After Bernie Sanders lost to Hillary Clinton back in 2016, Democratic rules changed, offering a better chance to underdog candidates. But you still need to lock in enough early support to score debate invitations.
If you're not invited to the debate, you're really not on the radar of the voters.
That's right, and Democrats are preparing for, debates that will take 2 nights on multiple stages, you name it, because there are going to be so many people running. The rule change this year means that you can qualify for the debate by doing really well in national polls, or you can show a lot of fundraising prowess with a lot of small donors, and that can get you qualified as well. And these are all changes that were kind of ushered in through the Bernie Sanders campaign. Mike and Alex.
How long did it take to figure out how to say Beto O'Rourke's name? How do you do it in your head?
Beto, I think it's Beto, right?
Yeah,
but
it's Beto.
What's more challenging, try Pete Buttigieg.
Excuse me?
Pete.
Don't you talk like that on our show? You son.
There are children watching, I understand.
That's right. Say it again.
Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
Okay.
Like boot, edge, Buttigieg.
And what about Hickenlooper? Or Hickenlooper out of Colorado.
Yeah.
And what about Hawaii? How do you say her name?
What, Tulsi Gabbard?
Tulsi.
This is going to be interesting.
By the way, let's go back to the Biden thing.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. When I asked for the podium and you can't see the wide shot. Oh, God. Who was he speaking to? What is that? There's a logo of a giant chicken on the front of the podium. Is that the Delaware Democrats?
What, Biden? I think Biden was talking to firefighters.
No, that was from a couple days ago. Firefighters for Biden.
Okay.
This is the one where he slipped up.
You really can't see the podium at all.
No. Ask for the
I can't see it at all right now.
Oh, we can't either. It's fine.
It's the Delaware Democrats. I remember what it is.
But what's your concern? They're chickens? Is that what?
Well, it's an interesting logo.
Yeah, it is.
Giant fighting chicken.
Okay.
Well, was it a blue hen? But it was a red, white, and blue chicken.
Doug is like, I don't know what they're talking about.
It's gonna be a long campaign year, I can tell.
It is.
There's no question.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug.
These are the things
we'll get through it together.
I worry about.
And here's a quick look at the Dow Jones as we transition to business. Getting married soon? There's a conversation you should have with your fiance, but a new study finds that 50% of couples aren't having it. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco joined Good Day this morning to tell us what it is.
All right, what's the over and under on Tracy telling the truth about this? I know.
Okay.
We're getting ready to. I know. Obviously.
I think she'll tell us. She'll let us know.
All right. Now you know what we're talking about. Experts say 50% of couples getting ready to get married fail to discuss their finances before they say their I do's. Now,
Tracy, when's your wedding?
It's this summer, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Now
Coming
you
up
work,
in May.
You work.
Oh
in,
no, that's quick.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's not the. That's the spring.
You work in finance for a living. Obviously, you've had the talk.
The talk.
Absolutely, and he works in finance as well. So we definitely had the conversation well before we were even engaged. Probably when we were still dating, he asked me how my investment portfolio was. So we definitely discussed finances, but as you mentioned, according to SunTrust Bank, they did a recent survey, found that 88% of couples do think that having this conversation about finances is very important, but only 50% of them are actually having the talk. They're actually going through with the difficult discussion. Maybe they're afraid, they're hesitant, they don't want it to change the course of their relationship, so they don't bring it up.
So
well, for you, then, how early did you, because you said it was when you guys were still dating, you talked about it.
Yeah.
Like, how long had you guys been dating before you had that discussion?
It had probably been a few years or so. It wasn't right off the bat.
Oh, okay.
But it was something that we openly talked about. It wasn't, neither of us were trying to hide anything. And I think we both realized, coming from our professional backgrounds, that it is an important conversation to have, to make sure you have the same financial goals, to make sure you have the same financial views, to know what kind of debt he had, what kind of debt I had, if I was still paying student loans, if he was. So all these things that you do need to talk about, even though they are a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, what does he do?
But hopefully it will set us up for a more successful future.
That's all great. We want the gossip. What does he do? Oh, you don't have to say, of course.
He works in finance. He manages people's money, essentially.
Oh, he can manage
the
your
easiest way
money.
to describe it.
Oh, this is perfect.
Is that why you're with him, or do you really love him?
Oh, my God. That's the obvious answer.
I know.
Of course, I love him.
Which one of you makes more money?
Okay, Mike. Jeez. I have a friend.
Well, that's the other obvious answer. No, I'm just kidding.
He manages everybody's
I have
money.
a friend who asks it in the beginning, like when you're getting to know someone, and she asks, like, hey, what's your credit score? Like, how's this going?
What?
Because she's very proud of hers, and she's like, look, I want to make sure I'm with someone. And
She don't want to waste your time.
yeah.
That makes sense.
They say it's one of the main reasons why people break up when it comes to money.
true.
So, if it's that important to you.
Get it out the way early.
Because she doesn't want to be in love and all this, and then you find out he's all this debt and you got to pay all this money, and, it's a mess, financial mess.
Yep.
Gosh.
I don't know. I mean, other people ask about other things, so why not that?
All right, that's going to be my first question on the next first date.
What's your credit score?
Well, what would
Show
you
me your
like?
portfolio.
What would you like to eat? And then, could I see the credit score before the
What's
meal
your credit
comes?
score?
Right.
All right.
Thanks, Tracy.
Tracy.
In May, that's coming up. I'm so excited.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yes, it is.
And staying on the topic of business, Apple's iPhone is taking the title of the most popular gaming device.
It just looks really
Analysts
awesome.
say more than 1 billion iPhones were sold over the past decade, with there are only about 800 million content.
Comes with 6 beautiful finishes. This is space.
As Apple continues to improve the iPhone with better chips and graphic performance, more gamers are turning it into their primary gaming device. And while we're on the topic of social media platforms, Snapchat reportedly is ready to launch a gaming platform. Cheddar is reporting that Snapchat could unveil its gaming platform as early as next month. The platform is codenamed Project Cognac and will feature a handful of games from outside developers designed to work specifically in the Snapchat app. It also plans to showcase more original shows. Switching gears to local news now. A man is dead after a shooting in the city's Logan section. It happened just before 2 o'clock this morning on the 5300 block of North 16th Street. Police say the victim was coming home after getting food when someone shot him in the driveway of his home. He died at Einstein Hospital. No arrests have been made in the case, and this is an ongoing investigation. Continuing with local news, police are investigating 2 speakeasy shootings that occurred over the weekend. The most recent one happening yesterday in Philadelphia's Crescentville section. Police say they were called to an illegal speakeasy around 1 a.m. on the 1100 block of Adams Avenue. That's where they found 2 men shot. A 22-year-old was hit in the stomach, and a 31-year-old was shot in the eye and arm. No word on the condition of the 22-year-old, but we are told the older victim is fighting for his life. We spoke to Captain Lee Strollo, who talks about the dangers of speakeasies and why police want them shut down.
There's a number of them around the city, and obviously they're a problem, and sometimes we don't know about them because they're hidden away like this one. But once we're notified, we do hit them. I do have information that this one was hit previously, so we were aware of it at one time, so apparently it popped up again.
According to the 911 calls, there were 2 men with guns who exchanged gunfire. No arrests have been made. And on Saturday in Camden County, the scene of another speakeasy shooting. Police responding in large numbers to Ferry Avenue. 27-year-old Rashawn McCormick was killed. 2 men and a woman were injured but are expected to be okay. Neighbors say the spot has been a problem in the past. The Camden County Prosecutor's Office is investigating the incident. Some more local news for you this morning. Do you know this woman? Delaware State Police are asking for your help finding Kimberly Lingham Bailey of Philadelphia. She's wanted for shoplifting in several states, including Delaware and New Jersey. Investigators say she targeted stores like Nordstrom and stole more than $4,000 in merchandise from one store in Newark. If you have any information, police want to hear from you. Now to Bucks County, a prosecutor says that he wants the death penalty for a man who admitted to killing and dismembering his girlfriend's 14-year-old daughter. 46-year-old Jacob Sullivan pleaded guilty in the 2016 murder of Grace Parker. Police say Sullivan, along with Grace's adopted mother, Sarah Packer, killed her while carrying out a rape-murder fantasy. Sarah Packer agreed to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence. Sullivan's lawyers say his client should get the same. The defense plans to call Packer as a witness during his sentencing. And back to Philadelphia. The city has more than 300 historical markers around the city, telling people about a significant person, place, or event in Philadelphia's history. Now, there are going to be 5 more. The Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission recently approved 18 new markers across the state, 5 of which will be in Philly. It's unclear when the new plaques will be installed, but we do know some of the figures getting markers across the state. They include Anna T. Jeans, a Quaker abolitionist; Bethel Burying Ground, which was an early African cemetery; Thomas J. Gala, one of the greatest basketball players of the mid-20th century; William J. Murtaugh, one of the nation's leading preservationists, and John Updike, a well-known author. And thank you all for watching Fox 29 News Now. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, as well as the Fox 29 website for all of the latest and breaking news. And tune into our broadcast at 5, 6, 10, and 11 tonight.